A massive report has been revealed from Elliotte Friedman during today's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs, which was a massive win. But the Boston Bruins are reportedly in talks with captain Brad Marchand and nearing a 3-year deal. Or so we thought. Brad Marchand has come out after the game and said his thoughts on this with a very interesting quote. So we're going to be breaking everything for this here down in this video. Before we get into it, though, we know since 70% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. If you're looking for a spot to get all of your Boston Bruins news just like this, you're in the right spot. Hit the sub button. Join me here on the channel. We're covering everything Boston Bruins here. And we got our first win in quite a while, and this team seems to be back. So I'll be breaking down everything in the game in tomorrow's video. So you're going to want to make sure to hit the sub button if you do want to check that out. But right now, we have to discuss this Brad Marchand news because this is something that we haven't heard in quite a while and some very big news that we reported or were reportedly hearing from Elliotte Friedman. So this is what we're going to start it off with here. The massive report from Elliotte Friedman, what we're seeing, what he was hearing in the intermission of today's game against the Toronto Maple Leafs. So this is what I'll pull up. This is what he had to say during this intermission. The word is that the Bruins and Marchand are getting closer on an extension. Expected to be a 3-year deal. We'll see what happens in the next little bit, but the word is that they're getting closer. Now, a lot of people, this reaction, including me, were very excited to hear this, getting Marchand locked up, good to go, get ready for the future as we move into kind of a new Boston Bruins lineup in the next coming seasons with a lot of these guys getting older. But seeing Brad Marchand still being on this team after receiving the captaincy last season and really just become the leader on this team for the rest of his career, kind of certified with this contract. However, reports are very conflicted with what we have seen, and Brad Marchand has seemed to deny this report, which is a very big thing that, coming right out after this report came up from Elliotte Friedman. Immediately after the game, Brad Marchand was asked about it, what he thought, and if this was true, and this is what Brad Marchand had to say about that. Elliotte likes talking about me this week. I'm not going to talk about the contract stuff in the media. That report was from Elliotte was false. If I was going to sign a 3-year extension, it would be signed. Clearly, Elliotte is just wrong there. Very interesting for Brad Marchand is Elliotte Friedman, one of those credible reporters in the NHL, if not the most credible. Brad Marchand is denying that report. So wherever we're hearing this from Elliotte Friedman, wherever he got his information is reportedly false, according to Brad Marchand. However, a very interesting thing to note from this as well is that Brad Marchand is not a guy that likes to discuss contracts in the media. So this may be the case, this may be a fact, and I'm excited to see what Elliotte Friedman has to say in response to this. What's going to likely be tomorrow if we're going to see something about that, and obviously I'll have the news if we do bring that. But right now, Elliotte Friedman hasn't said anything about this, so it would not surprise me in the slightest if we actually are close to a contract with Brad Marchand, which it could be in the 3-year range. And Brad Marchand is just trying to deny that, keep it under the radar until things are actually done. Very, very similar to what he said and what his reaction was to being asked about the Jeremy Swayman contract extension. And I do have a screenshot here kind of going over what this case would be. And this is what they said. We have plenty of discussions with Brad Marchand, this coming from Don Sweeney, his camp in terms of trying to find a landing spot there. Bruins general manager Don Sweeney said on September 30th before the start of the season, we're as proactive as we possibly can be within the parameters of the league and the CBA of when we talk to players. And of course, Don Sweeney is looking to get this extension done. He's been in contact, in discussions with Brad Marchand, his team, since July 1st, realistically, the date that we could, although that was on the back seat until we had signed Swayman, and I'm sure Marchand was also very much for that, and Marchand is a guy who's not going to, he's not going to kind of screw the team over at the point he is in his career, especially being a captain. The transformation we've seen from his personality, his play style, everything over the past, I'm going to call it decade, but really over the past 6-7 years, and we're expecting to see Marchand back here with the Bruins about 100% next season. And that's a big thing that we're kind of looking at here as well, is what we're looking at going into the cap space, what we're looking at over the next few seasons. Who else needs a contract on this team? And there are a few that will need to be signed, but right now, I think regardless of who it may be, what their role may be, Brad Marchand is the number one for this. And we know very little about this right now. All we're hearing from Elliotte Friedman is that things are close. Brad Marchand completely denies that and really says if it were to be a 3-year deal and a 3-year extension, that would already be signed. But, once again, as I mentioned, Brad Marchand could definitely be hiding this, kind of keeping this under the table. That would not surprise me one bit because of his reaction to contract discussions in the media. And going into our next screenshot here, kind of looking at it, as you can see, these are the forwards that we're really looking at next year for an extension on this side of things. Brad Marchand being the most notable, as well as Trent Frederic. Morgan Geekie, who right now, so far this season, really hasn't been putting his name out there for a big number. John Beecher, who is the exact opposite, really putting his name out there for quite a nice contract. Mark Pastrnak, who it seems like the Bruins are going to want to re-sign. Cole Koepke and Justin Brazeau, both of those guys as well. But all the same, no matter what goes on with those guys for the rest of the season, I think Brad Marchand still is the #1 guy to be signed on this team. And on the defensive side of things, it's really just Parker Wotherspoon and Mason Lohrei. So there are not too many notable contracts that need to be signed for the Bruins apart from Brad Marchand, and that is going to be their main priority. They want this one done before the offseason, before Christmas or the new year, if they can really try and do that and want to have him done. And personally, I think that will be the case. I don't think we're going to see Brad Marchand really holding out, especially where he is and his role and status with this team. So we're looking very good at this. Now, regardless of what the price would be, I think that Marchand is not going to be asking too much, knowing that he's kind of at the end of his career. He's on a pay cut right now, but certainly would deserve a pay raise, a nice payday, and especially for the 3 years that it would be if it were 3, maybe 2, maybe 1. We don't know how long Brad Marchand wants to have left in his career. I'm sure he wants to have as many years as possible, but realistically, we're not seeing everybody in the NHL, and many older guys really play for a super long time anymore, as we did with, Gordie Howe and those types of guys who are playing until 50, or Jaromir Jagr now. These guys really only have a few years left around that Brad Marchand age, so it really is depending on how long he thinks he can play at this level, and really how long he wants to play until he finally decides to hang up the skates, which is hopefully no time soon. But as we move on to our next one as well, looking at Brad Marchand, he hasn't been the best over the past, 2 or 3 seasons, and obviously he's not a goal scorer that's going to go out and get you 120 points a season, but he's been very good in the past few years, slowly declining, but still being a notable presence on the ice, and mainly in the locker room as well, where he really shows his leadership to this team. So, Brad Marchand's not a guy that we're going out to go for points, to go for all that kind of stuff, to be our #1 target, #1 goal scorer. And he knows that as well. He's not in that point in his career, and never really was, but he's been so important, and more important than half of those guys that are on other teams around the league for the Boston Bruins. And I'm excited to see what this turns into, because there's no doubt in my mind that we're going to see an extension coming very soon. And even if it's a 3-year deal that comes in the next few days, would not surprise me if Brad Marchand is trying to hide that, because Elliotte Friedman, of course, knows what he's talking about. He knows what he's doing, and he knows that, he's ready to go. He knows exactly what we're doing. So it's very often that, not very often that Elliotte Friedman is wrong with those reports, but as I mentioned, Brad Marchand, not really too fond of being in the media in that way. But looking at our annual cap projections over the next few seasons, this offseason we're projected at $18 million. So kind of time that and work that into what we're looking at. Whether all of those guys be signed or extended, we don't really know on that case, but adding Brad Marchand, just say at a $7 million deal, would really only allow the Bruins to have $11 million in cap space left. Then when you add up all the other players, even if they were at $1 or $2 million, which would add up quite a bit, that would leave the very much room for the Boston Bruins to go out in free agency and look for some players. So we have to wonder, is Brad Marchand looking for that one final payday, or is he going to take another pay cut to stay with the Boston Bruins? And, I think we can see both sides of this coin depending on how Brad Marchand's looking at this. And I would honestly understand both sides of this coin and what he would want to do. You can't really blame him for wanting a payday, but if he takes a pay cut, once again, he's just one of those team players that you want to have on every single team that you're a fan of. But, really we have no information right now of what Elliotte Friedman had to say, but I will be keeping you guys updated with this and also going over a breakdown of the game tomorrow, looking at this, a big win for the Boston Bruins, one that we absolutely needed, as well as Brad Marchand scoring that overtime goal. Maybe he continues. Maybe this is the start of his contract that will continue to grow and grow and grow this season. But as I mentioned, be sure to hit the sub button if you want all your news. I'll be having a lot more updates tomorrow. I'm sure I'm waiting for Elliotte Friedman to come out with this, what he has to say, and I'm sure we're going to see it tomorrow at some point. So be sure to hit the sub button if you want to find out with that. But that's all I got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. I'm signing out. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.